When Martin was promoted to regional director, he wasted no time in implementing drastic changes. His first move was to introduce stringent cost-cutting measures, which, unsurprisingly, did not apply to his own generous salary. Overnight, travel allowances were slashed, employee benefits were reduced, and performance bonuses were scrapped altogether. Morale took an immediate nosedive, but Martin dismissed the concerns, insisting that tough times required tough decisions. Within weeks, the once thriving office turned into a place of silent resentment. Employees who had been with the company for years felt betrayed, and many sought opportunities elsewhere. Those who remained found themselves burdened with extra responsibilities, often forced to take on tasks outside their expertise. Overworked and underappreciated, they had little motivation to go the extra mile. The worst blow came when Martin decided to lay off the customer support team, arguing that automation would take care of their duties. However, the automated system was riddled with flaws, leading to an overwhelming number of complaints. Clients grew frustrated with long response times and unresolved issues. The company's reputation suffered, and so did its revenue. Yet, instead of addressing the root cause, Martin blamed the remaining employees for the decline in customer satisfaction. Even office maintenance wasn't spared. The cleaning staff was reduced to a skeleton crew, unable to keep up with the demands of a busy workplace. Trash piled up in common areas, restrooms went unclean for days, and the office began to develop an unpleasant odor. Employees, already drained from excessive workloads, now had to deal with an unsanitary work environment. Some brought their own cleaning supplies, while others simply stopped caring. By the time upper management took notice, the damage was done. The company had lost several valuable employees, client trust was at an all-time low, and productivity had plummeted. Martin, however, had already secured a high-paying role elsewhere, leaving behind a broken organization struggling to recover from his disastrous leadership. Mrs. Bennett, the dedicated and compassionate HR manager, had spent weeks tirelessly advocating for a fairer wage for the janitorial position. She understood the importance of hiring a competent worker and believed that offering a slightly higher salary would attract someone reliable. However, her repeated attempts to reason with Nate, the company's operations manager, fell on deaf ears. He dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand, unwilling to entertain the idea of increasing costs. Every morning during staff meetings, Nate would express his growing frustration over the office's unkempt state. Papers were scattered, dust accumulated in forgotten corners, and coffee stains lingered on desks. His complaints became a routine grievance, yet he adamantly refused to allocate resources to address the issue. His arrogance and dictatorial leadership only fueled resentment among the staff, who had long since grown weary of his dismissive attitude. One crisp morning, as Nate stood by his office window, sipping his coffee and brooding over the mess, his gaze settled on the alley behind the building. There, near the dumpster, a woman in tattered clothes was meticulously stacking discarded cardboard boxes. Unlike the usual vagrants who rummage through trash with reckless abandon, she moved with an air of purpose and efficiency. Her hands, swift and deliberate, handled the discarded materials with a precision that intrigued him. Something about her composure and silent diligence sparked an idea in his mind. A sly grin crept onto Nate's face. Without a second thought, he flung open the window and called out, "Hey, you there? I have a job offer for you." The woman continued working, seemingly oblivious to his words. Nate's annoyance flared. He turned sharply to the security guard standing by the door and snapped, "Bring that woman inside. Now!" Minutes later, the woman was escorted into the office, her presence immediately stirring murmurs among the employees. Despite her worn and mismatched attire, she appeared well-groomed. Her dark hair was neatly tied into a bun, and though her clothes bore signs of wear, they were scrupulously clean. Up close, she exuded a quiet dignity that contrasted sharply with her ragged appearance. Mrs. Bennett observed the interaction with a skeptical yet curious gaze. Nate, ever the opportunist, leaned forward and asked, "What's your name?" The woman remained silent. A puzzled look crossed Nate's face. He repeated the question, more slowly this time. Again, no response. Then, as she adjusted a small, outdated hearing aid behind her ear, realization dawned upon the gathered employees. She was deaf. A brief, awkward silence filled the room. The staff exchanged uncertain glances, while Mrs. Bennett's expression softened with understanding. Nate, however, was undeterred. He exaggerated his lip movements and spoke in an artificially slow manner. Do you understand me? The woman nodded once, her gaze steady. Do you want a job? He continued, gesturing around the room. Just cleaning the office. For a moment, she hesitated. Her eyes flickered toward Mrs. Bennett, as if searching for reassurance. The HR manager offered a small, encouraging nod. With a resolute breath, the woman turned back to Nate and gave a single, deliberate nod. Nate, satisfied with himself, smirked triumphantly and turned to Mrs. Bennett. See? Finding an employee wasn't as difficult as you claimed. Mrs. Bennett, however, remained silent, her eyes lingering on the woman's composed demeanor. There was more to this new hire than met the eye, and as the days unfolded, the office was about to witness a transformation they never expected. Lauren started working the very next day. She arrived at the office early in the morning, carrying a small bag with her cleaning supplies. Without a word, she set to work, diligently scrubbing every surface, wiping down desks, and ensuring that every corner of the office was spotless. She moved quietly, never seeking attention, never demanding recognition. By the end of the week, the entire office gleamed with a cleanliness it had never known before. Despite her efforts, Lauren's presence was barely acknowledged. Her colleagues, rather than showing appreciation, found amusement in her silence. Knowing that she was deaf, they spoke ill of her openly, making cruel jokes as they stood just inches away. They would laugh, assuming she was completely oblivious to their ridicule. Some went even further, misplacing her cleaning tools, spilling coffee deliberately, or leaving unnecessary messes for her to clean up. They treated her not as a fellow human being, but as an invisible servant. But Lauren was not easily shaken. Each day, after completing her exhausting shift, she would return to her humble home on the outskirts of town. It was a small, worn-down shelter pieced together with salvaged wood and metal sheets. Though modest, it was a place of warmth and love, for there, waiting eagerly for her return, were her beloved companions, 3 playful kittens, a gentle cat, 2 loyal dogs, and a parrot with an injured wing. These animals were her family, the reason she endured the cruelty of the world outside. She spent nearly all of her meager earnings on food and medicine for them, often leaving little for herself. Some nights, she went to bed hungry, yet she never regretted it. Her animals depended on her, and their unconditional love made every sacrifice worthwhile. When she sat among them, listening to the soft purring of her kittens or the contented sighs of her dogs, the harsh words of her colleagues faded into insignificance. Despite everything, Lauren found solace in the simple joys of life. She carried on, unwavering, holding on to the quiet strength that resided within her. And though the world around her may never have noticed, in the eyes of her furry and feathered family, she was everything. As time went on, the company's situation deteriorated further. Nate's draconian management style created an oppressive atmosphere, leading to a mass exodus of employees. Morale was at an all-time low, and those who remained found themselves overworked and disillusioned. The once vibrant office, filled with collaboration and energy, became eerily quiet. Desks sat vacant, projects stalled, and client satisfaction declined rapidly. Concerned about the branch's sudden decline, the company's owner, Nolan, decided to take a closer look. Though he had always trusted his managers to handle daily operations, the alarming drop in productivity and revenue could not be ignored. To get to the root of the problem, he discreetly installed surveillance cameras throughout the office, hoping to observe what was truly happening behind the scenes. Weeks passed, and Nolan's concerns deepened as he reviewed the footage. He noticed the stark contrast between how the office once operated and its current state under Nate's rule. Employees who once engaged in brainstorming sessions and teamwork now avoided interaction altogether. They entered the office looking defeated and left as quickly as possible. But what truly caught Nolan's attention was one particular employee, Lauren, the janitor. Unlike the others, Lauren stayed late after completing her cleaning duties. Every night, after ensuring the office was spotless, she would quietly settle at an empty desk, open a notebook, and start working diligently. Her movements were precise, her focus unwavering. She pored over reports, analyzed data, and drafted documents with a level of professionalism that was unexpected from someone in her position. One morning, Nolan received an exceptionally well-drafted business development plan. The document was meticulously structured, complete with in-depth market analysis, financial projections, and strategic recommendations. The graphs and diagrams were crafted with precision, demonstrating both creativity and a deep understanding of business principles. Intrigued, Nolan called Nate into his office and inquired, "Who prepared this?" Without hesitation, Nate arrogantly took credit for the work, claiming it as his own. But something didn't sit right with Nolan. The polished writing style and thoughtful analysis seemed out of character for Nate, whose previous reports were often rushed and riddled with errors. His curiosity piqued, Nolan decided to review the surveillance footage. What he discovered left him astounded. The video showed Lauren, long after everyone had gone home, poring over financial data, sketching strategy diagrams, and carefully crafting the report that had landed on his desk. It was clear that her work was not a product of chance, but of skill, intelligence, and relentless dedication. Nolan watched as she cross-referenced sources, corrected minute errors, and even practiced presentations in front of an empty room. It was evident Lauren was far more than just a janitor. Realizing the depth of her talent, Nolan knew he had to act. He summoned Lauren to his office the next day. When she arrived, she looked nervous, unsure why the company's owner wanted to speak with her. Nolan slid the business development plan across the table and asked, "Did you write this?" Lauren hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, sir," she admitted. "I've always been passionate about business strategy. I studied it in college, but after facing financial difficulties, I had to take whatever job I could find." Impressed by her honesty and talent, Nolan made a decision on the spot. "From today onward, you're no longer a janitor. I want you on my strategy team. Your insights and skills are exactly what this company needs." Lauren's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," Nolan affirmed. And as for Nate, he leaned back in his chair, his expression turning serious. His days of taking credit for others' work are over. Within days, major changes swept through the office. Nate was removed from his position, and Lauren was promoted to a role where her talents could truly shine. As she stepped into her new office, one with her name on the door, she felt a surge of pride and determination. She had spent years being overlooked, but now, she was finally being recognized for what she was truly capable of. And with her expertise guiding the company's strategy, the future had never looked brighter. Lauren had spent years in the shadows, sweeping floors and emptying trash cans in an office filled with people who never truly saw her. But behind her quiet demeanor and janitor's uniform lay a mind sharper than most of the executives in the building. Once she had been at the top of her class in business school, with a promising future ahead. She had dreams of running her own company, of making a name for herself in the corporate world. Then tragedy struck. A devastating accident stole everything from her: her fiancé, her family's support, and even her ability to hear. Struggling with grief and a newfound disability, she found herself spiraling downward, unable to maintain the life she had once envisioned. The bright, ambitious woman she had been was buried beneath layers of hardship, and she was forced to take whatever work she could find to survive. Cleaning offices was not what she had ever imagined for herself, but at least it kept her afloat. That was, until Nolan, the regional director, stumbled upon a business proposal he had been given by one of his department heads, Nate. Something about it felt off. The ideas were far too refined, too intelligent, to have come from Nate, a man whose leadership style was more about arrogance than strategic thinking. Nolan had worked with him long enough to know that his strengths did not lie in innovation. His curiosity piqued, he decided to dig deeper. When he finally confronted Lauren, she hesitated. No one had asked her about her past in years. Most people never even bothered to learn her name. But as Nolan pressed, something in her broke. With quiet resolve, she told him everything. How she had once been a promising business student, how life had stripped her of everything, and how she had been forced into a life far beneath her capabilities. Nolan listened, his expression unreadable. When she finished, she expected pity. Instead, he nodded, as if confirming something he had already suspected. The next morning, Nolan called Nate into his office. The man strode in confidently, but that confidence quickly faltered when he saw the severity in Nolan's eyes. "You nearly destroyed this branch with your incompetence," Nolan stated coldly. "I tolerated your authoritarian leadership, but stealing someone else's work? That was the final straw." Nate's face paled. He opened his mouth to protest, but Nolan had already made up his mind. "You're fired. Pack your things." As Nate stormed out, anger and disbelief contorting his features, Nolan turned to his assistant. "Bring Lauren to my office." Minutes later, she entered hesitantly, unsure of what to expect. She had spent so long trying to remain unseen that being summoned by the director himself felt almost surreal. Nolan gestured for her to sit. "I know talent when I see it," he said simply, "and I don't let it go to waste. You don't belong behind a mop, Lauren. You belong in a boardroom." Her heart pounded. She had spent years believing her future had been stolen from her. But now, for the first time in a long time, she saw the faintest glimmer of hope. "Are you ready to step back into the world you were meant for?" Nolan asked. Lauren swallowed hard, emotions swelling in her chest. Then, with newfound determination, she nodded. "Yes, I'm ready." Nolan sat in silence as Lauren recounted her life story, her voice steady but laced with the pain of past wounds. She spoke of a childhood filled with hardship, growing up in a small town where opportunities were scarce, and where every day was a struggle to make ends meet. Despite the obstacles, she had always been resilient, determined to carve out a future for herself through hard work and perseverance. But life had been cruel to her in ways no one deserved. She told him about the accident that changed everything, the tragic event that took away not only the love of her life, but also her hearing. In a single moment, she lost both the man she was supposed to marry and the world of sound she had once taken for granted. The silence that followed was more than just the absence of noise. It was an isolating void that made even the simplest interactions difficult. Yet, through sheer willpower, she learned to navigate this new reality, mastering lip reading and sign language while refusing to let her condition define her. Nolan was deeply moved by her resilience. He saw in her an unbreakable spirit, a leader who had been tempered by adversity. He knew that someone with her strength and perseverance could bring about the change the company desperately needed. Without hesitation, he appointed her as the new executive director of the branch, a decision that surprised many but ultimately proved to be one of the best he had ever made. Under Lauren's leadership, the company experienced a remarkable transformation. She introduced policies that prioritized employee well-being, fostering an environment where workers felt valued and heard. Productivity soared as she implemented new strategies that encouraged collaboration and innovation. The once declining company regained its reputation, and even former employees who had resigned returned, eager to be part of the positive change she had set in motion. Her ability to lead with both compassion and efficiency made her not just respected, but deeply admired by those around her. As time passed, Nolan and Lauren's professional relationship evolved into something more. They spent countless hours together, discussing strategies and sharing ideas, but also opening up to one another about their personal experiences, dreams, and fears. What began as mutual respect soon blossomed into love. Nolan found himself drawn to her kindness and strength, while Lauren, despite her initial hesitation, realized that she could allow herself to love again. Eventually, they married in an intimate ceremony, surrounded by close friends and colleagues who had witnessed their journey together. Wanting to express his deep gratitude and love, Nolan surprised Lauren with a gift that truly reflected her passion, an animal rescue center. He knew of her deep compassion for animals, especially strays, and wanted to give her a place where she could channel that love into something meaningful. The center became a sanctuary not just for abandoned animals, but also for Lauren, who found healing in caring for them. But Nolan's gestures did not stop there. He made sure she had access to the best medical treatments available, hoping to improve her quality of life. Miraculously, as time went on, Lauren's hearing began to return, little by little. It was as if fate had finally chosen to restore to her what had been unjustly taken. The first time she heard Nolan say her name, her eyes filled with tears, and he held her tightly, overwhelmed by the moment. Their story became one of hope, resilience, and the power of kindness. It was a testament to the idea that even in the face of profound loss, new beginnings were possible. And as Lauren stood in the midst of the bustling animal rescue center, surrounded by wagging tails and grateful hearts, she knew that despite everything she had endured, life had given her something truly beautiful in return. From being dismissed by society as a mere beggar, Lauren proved that a person's worth isn't defined by their circumstances, but by their abilities and resilience. Her story became a powerful testament to perseverance and the strength to overcome adversity. Her life had come full circle, proving that even in the darkest times, hope and determination could forge a brighter future. And so, the company, once on the brink of collapse, now thrived under the leadership of a woman who had once been overlooked by everyone, except fate itself.